Hi friends, this is group number 2, D. Seguito, and we are dealing with the novel Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. Myself, Aishwarya, presenting the topic, the significance of the title Disgrace and abstract of the novel Disgrace. So, the significance of the novel Disgrace give the three main aspects or three main ideas. One, shame, second one is remorse, and third one is vanity. On the same time, the novel Disgrace investigates the shame and dishonor that happening between the characters. Also, it portrayed or picturized the irregular relationship, the allegation between the characters. Another important thing is that the title also shows the background of post-apartheid South Africa. That is, at the time of the parliament or political constitution established, the black came to power on the basis of majority rule and white minorities are subjected here for sufferings. So, the entire novel deals with these ideas and the subjugation to the whites led by the black. Next, move on to the abstract of the novel Disgrace, where the hunter became the hunted. J.M. Coetzee's novel Disgrace, 1999, that won him the Nobel Prize and the second Booker Prize in the literature. The novel picturized the black brightened picture of the South African society. There the whites are oppressed and they are considered as the marginalized sections of the society. This novel also shows the hostilities and brutalities between the whites and the blacks, and also it picturized the cultural, psychological and political situations in South Africa. After the new Constitution of South Africa was adopted in 1994, the novel Disgrace came under the debate in the Parliament of South Africa. The African National Congress Party was one of the most prominent anti-apartheid movement led by Nelson Mandela, who was the first post-apartheid elected president of South Africa in 1994. During his ruling time, the party felt and also accepted that the novel Disgrace presented correct and accurate pessimistic picture of the South Africa, in which the thematic focus reveals the race tool that shows poverty, crime, xenophobia, bloodshed and homosexuality. The significant themes of the entire novel revolve around the protagonist David Lurie. For a man of his age 52, divorced, he has to his mind solved the problems of sex rather well. Who is an old professor of English communication at Technical University in the Cape Town. So, in the entire novel, we can see the political, cultural and psychological background of post-apartheid South Africa.
I am Sri Lakshmi, dealing with the writer J.M. Coetzee. John Maxwell Coetzee, often called J.M. Coetzee, is a South African born Australian novelist, essayist, linguist, translator. He was born in Cape Town, South Africa on February 9, 1940. J.M. Coetzee first studied at Cape Town and later at the University of Texas at Austin, where he earned a PhD degree in literature. In 1972, he returned to South Africa and joined the faculty of the University of Cape Town. Coetzee is one of the most critically acclaimed and decorated authors in the English language. His works of fiction include Dusklands Waiting for the Barbarians, which won South Africa's highest literary honor, the Central News Agency Literary Award, and The Life and Times of Michael Kay, for which Coetzee was awarded his first Booker Prize in 1983. He has also published a memoir, Boyhood, Scenes from My Provincial Life, and several essay collections. He has won many other literary prizes, including the Lennon Award for Fiction, the Jerusalem Prize, and the Irish Times International Fiction Prize. In 1999, he again won Britain's prestigious Booker Prize for Disgrace, becoming the first author to win the award twice in its 31-year history. In 2003, Coetzee was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Hi all, myself Gautam Krishna and I am here with the character analysis of the novel Disgrace, and the characters are 1. David Lawyer. He is a twice divorced professor of communications at Cape Technical University in Cape Town, South Africa. He is 52-year-old. Next, Suraya, the prostitute that Laurie has visited weekly for over an year. Next, Malena Isaacs, student in Laurie's romantic course who charges a sexual harassment complaint against him after having sex with Laurie. Next is Lucy. She is Laurie's daughter and who own a farm and take care of the dogs. Laurie lives with her after his dismissal from the position at the university. Next, Bev Shaw, the woman who runs an animal shelter and with whom Laurie have an affair. Next is Bill Shaw, Bev's husband, who sees David Laurie as his friend. Next is Petrus, African who work for Laurie. Next is Mr. Isaac, Melena's father, whom Laurie apologizes to after the incident. Next is Pollux, one of the three South Africans who raped Lucy, and he is Petrus' brother-in-law. Next is Katie, the surviving dog. Next is Elaine Winter, chair of communications department. Next is Ferodia Rasul, the social studies professor and the chair of the committee of discrimination. Next is Adam Hakim, sympathetic member of Melena's sexual harassment investigation. Next is Rosalind, Laurie's second ex-wife. Next is Evelina, Lucy's biological mother. Next is Teresa Grigoi, Byron's last mistresses before he died. Byron and Teresa's relationship is the topic of Laurie's opera. Next is Ryan, Melena's boyfriend. And the last one is Desire, Melena's younger sister.
Disgrace begins in Cape Town, South Africa. The protagonist, David Lurie, is a middle aged, cynical white scholar specializing in romantic poetry, but unhappily employed as a professor of communications at a university in Cape Town, South Africa. He has been twice divorced and has a grown daughter, Lucy Lurie, who lives on a homestead in the Eastern Cape. David considers himself as a disciple of Romantic poet William Wordsworth and is toying with the idea of writing an operetta based on the life of another Romantic poet, Lord Byron. David's trouble begins when the prostitute he has been sleeping with for a year drops him as a client. David is faced with the problem of satisfying his immense sexual appetite at an age when he is no longer particularly attractive to women. As a result, he coerces one of his young students, Melanie Isaacs, into a brief sexual affair that includes raping her. In addition, David falsifies Melanie's grades and attendance record in her favor. Melanie drops out of David's class and files a sexual harassment complaint. A committee of David's colleagues is convened to hear both sides of the story and make a recommendation to the university rector as to how to deal with David in light of the charge. David immediately pleads guilty without having read Melanie's charge against him. The committee wants David to confess the story of his lies and make a sincere show of contrition for wrongdoing in order to save his job. David refuses to compromise by doing this or by endorsing a prepared statement. He quits the job and leaves Cape Town to go stay with his daughter Lucy on her homestead in the Eastern Cape near Grahamstown. There, Lucy makes a living kenneling dogs and selling produce at the farmers market. She is as practical, down to earth, and responsible, unlike David. Her black Sousa neighbor, Petrus, has become her co proprietor. A government grant has enabled Petrus to purchase part of Lucy's land and begin building a house of his own. Despite his insistence that he doesn't want to do anything that might make him into a better person, David reluctantly begins assisting Lucy's friend Bev Shaw at the volunteer clinic where she treats sick animals and euthanizes those who are beyond treatment. One day, three locals, that is, two men and a teenager, come to Lucy's house. Petrus is nowhere to be found, and they lock David in the bathroom and set him on fire, which he quickly puts out. While he is locked away, they rape Lucy. They then rob the house and take off in David's car. David is in shock. However, Lucy is calm and takes charge, getting David medical help. She reports the robbery to the police, but not the rape. As David cannot understand why she does not report the rape, however, she tells David that the rape is a private matter and that it is possibly understandable as a form of taking back what is due from the legacy of colonialism. David will not stop pestering Lucy about the incident, insisting she must leave and start a new life elsewhere. He is very suspicious of Petrus's absence during the attack and Petrus's cool, evasive attitude about the incident once he returns. Then we can see that later Petrus throws a party celebrating his new status as a landowner. Then David encounters the adolescent who raped Lucy there and confronts the boy, starting a scene. At the party, thrown by Petrus. The boy claims ignorance and Petrus intervenes and defends the boy. As the distance grows between David and Lucy, David begins assisting Bev in euthanizing dogs at the clinic, an activity that moves David deeply in ways he does not understand. Despite the fact that he finds Bev unattractive, he begins an affair with her. The detectives call with news that they have found David's car, but it turns out to be the wrong one. He and Lucy have a heated discussion about what she should do. She is firm that she will not leave her home and that he doesn't understand what happened to her. David says he does understand that she was raped and terrified, and he did not help her. He writes her a letter begging her to leave for her own safety, and she writes back saying his guidance is not helpful to her. David leaves the farm to return to Cape Town. On his way back, David stopped to talk to Melanie, Isaac's father, and ends up going to the family home for dinner. David apologizes to the family. Mr. Isaacs tells David that he must consider what God wants him to do besides be sorry. David returns home to find that his house has been robbed while he was away. He feels useless, hopeless, and unwanted, as well as guilty for abandoning the dogs at the clinic. He begins writing his Byron opera using a toy banjo that was Lucy's when she was a child. He becomes consumed by the work and begins to understand what art is. And then we can see that when he meets his ex wife Rosalind for coffee, she criticizes him for ruining his life for Melanie Isaacs. David begins to long for Melanie again and goes to watch a play she is acting in. There, Melanie's boyfriend runs David out of the theater and tells him Melanie hates him. On the way home, David, who is shaken, stops and has sex with an intoxicated young prostitute. He is surprised at the ease with which this brings him back to a state of calm. As suspicious that something has changed with Lucy, David makes an excuse to return to her farm. She reveals she is pregnant from the rape and will keep the child. David finds the pre- preposterous and becomes outraged that his legacy will be thus tainted. He learns that the boy who raped Lucy, Pollux, is part of Petrus's family. When David confronts Petrus, Petrus says he will marry Lucy to protect her, since Pollux is too young to do so. While acknowledging that Petrus is after her land, Lucy accepts Petrus's deal, though on her own terms. She will, she will turn her land over to him as a dowry, but the house will remain hers, and her child must be accepted by Petrus as part of his family. Later, David attacks Pollux when he finds him spying on Lucy. Lucy makes it clear that David's outbursts have destroyed her peace. He leaves the farm and takes up residence behind the animal clinic to wait for the birth of Lucy's child. He continues to help Bev while he works on the opera. One day, David goes to the farm uninvited and Lucy asks him in like a visitor. She tells him she wants to be a good person and that he should try to do the same. David thinks that might be worthwhile and turns his thoughts to being a grandfather. At the clinic, David has become particularly attached to one crippled dog. The novel closes with David bringing the dog in to be euthanized.
Hello friends, I am Aishwar Lakshmi and I am dealing with the major themes in the novel Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. Disgrace portrays the Black Brighton picture of the South African society with a different note where the whites are oppressed and marginalized section of the community and where the hunter became the hunted. Now the first major theme was desire and power. In Disgrace, J.M. Coetzee scrutinizes the nature of human desire, specifically looking at the relationship between power and sexual yearnings. Because Disgrace is partly about a 52-year-old professor who loses his job after sleeping with a student, it's impossible to ignore the power dynamics at play in the novel, as Professor David Lurie, who uses his elevated position to manipulate 20-year-old Melanie into having sex with him. Now, shame, remorse, and vanity. As the title suggests, Disgrace is a novel that investigates shame and dishonor. Having had an illicit affair with Melanie, David is summoned to a disciplinary hearing where he refuses to examine her allegations. Instead, he simply states that he is guilty. In doing so, he avoids having to pour through her statement, effectively sidestepping the matter and making it easier for himself to dismiss his own immoral actions. Now, violence and empathy. Disgrace concerns itself with failures of empathy. When David forces himself on Melanie, he recognizes that his advances are undesired, but he continues anyway, exhibiting a troubling lack of compassion. In a similar but much more severe manner, The three men who raped Lucy do what they want to her without considering her humanity. Now, love and support. In Disgrace, Coetzee spotlights the benefits and subtleties of interpersonal support. After David is publicly shamed in Cape Town for sleeping with Melanie, he travels to his daughter's farm to temporarily escape his troubles. Unlike his ex wife Rosalind, who, upon hearing about the scandal, calls him and admonishes him for what he's done, Lucy doesn't force David to talk about what happened with Melanie. Now, time and change. In many ways, Disgrace is a novel about a man who resists change. First of all, David has a strange relationship with the process of aging, which is evident in his fascination with sex. He uses sex as a way of maintaining his sense of youthfulness, ultimately trying to recapture his days as a handsome young ladies' man. So, these were the major themes: desire and power, shame, remorse and vanity, violence and empathy, love and support, time and change. And thank you, friends.